Hey, what's up everyone? It's Mr. Lang. As we get into Regents review time, my plan is to have you do topical reviews, which are, on a specific unit or subject. And then we're also going to do, practice Regents questions. But for tonight's homework, you're doing this functions review worksheet. And functions is something we've been talking about all year long. So this worksheet is an awesome review. So listen, I am not going to do all the questions in here. That would take way too long. In this video, I'm going to do questions 4, 5, 6, and 13. I handpicked those because I thought they were good ones for me to go over, and it'll give you kind of a jump start on everything. What I recommend is, if you haven't done it yet, try these questions first, just 4, 5, 6, and 13. Then watch the video and see how you did. Once you're done with the video, then go back and finish the entire worksheet, and there's an online quiz. So that's the idea behind this homework. So let's get started with number 4. Alright, so number 4 says, which of the following represents the range of the function shown in the graph below? And we're given this graph, and the range is always the minimum to the maximum. Well, the minimum of this function in this case, and remember with minimums and maximums we're always talking y values, the minimum is -4. The max, well, it doesn't quite get to -4, but really that's what we're going to be thinking. And the maximum is 5. So normally how we would write, and the way we've been doing it all year, we say, okay, the minimum, since it's an open circle, we're going to leave this as just less than with the y, and then it equals 5 because it's a closed circle there. So this is how we would write it all year, and this is correct, but unfortunately this is given in a weird notation. This is called interval notation. We didn't use it at all this year, and I'm not sure if you've ever seen it before. I'm going to guess no. But it's actually pretty easy. It's a little bit shorter than this way, so it's nice in that way. You just have to remember what the brackets and parentheses mean. If it's a closed circle at the graph, then you're going to use the square brackets. If it's an open circle, then use the parentheses. So in this case, since the minimum here is open, it should be a parenthesis at -4. And since it's a closed circle at 5, we will use the bracket. So in this case, it's got to be answer 1. Cool, let's move on to the next one. Number 5, it says, which of the following represents the average rate of change for the function f of x equals x squared over the interval 1 to 3. So the average rate of change, remember, this just means slope. And one nice way to give the slope formula, it's the change in y over the change in x. And remember that f of x means the change in y, or the y. So I'm going to say this is f of x2 minus f of x1. Those represent, the y values, over the x values, x2 minus x1. Well, I'm going to call this my x2 point, and this is my x1 point. So in this case, my average rate of change, or my slope, since it's x squared, it's going to be 3 squared minus 1 squared over my x2 is just 3 minus 1. So what this turns out to be is 3 squared is 9, 1 squared is 1, over 3 minus 1. And that is 8 over 2, which of course is equal to 4. So the average rate of change over this interval for x squared is going to be 4, which is answer 4. All right, let's move on to the next one, number 6. Number 6, for the function f of x shown below, which of the following represents the interval over which f of x is less than 0? Remember, f of x, you can always just think in your mind, f of x means the y. So if y is less than 0, that means y is negative. Well, where y is negative are all the points, let me highlight it, kind of the low half of the graph here. So everything here. Well, the interval, the x interval, so it starts to go negative right here and it goes all the way to here. So from here to here, the y value is negative. Well, this starts at -2 and goes all the way to 4. So we can immediately get rid of answers 3 and 4, and we have to choose between 1 and 2. And since right at -2 it's 0 and at 4 it's 0, that's not negative. So we can't include those. We don't want to include -2 and 4, so I'll get rid of that. So it's, basically bigger than -2 but less than 4. So our answer is 1. All right, on to the last one, number 13. This is a piecewise function. I know this was one of the tougher topics this year. It's really not that difficult an idea. It's just sometimes it's hard to graph these things. Well, what do we got? We got f of x, and from -5 to -2, we define it by this line 3x plus 11. But from -2 to +4, we define it by this different line, -1/2 x plus 5. Now, normally with lines, I don't use the calculator to make a table of values. We know how to graph lines. But in this case, I actually think it's easier to use a table of values. And it just depends on which value or which equation we're going to use. And all that depends on the x. So for our table of values, I'm going to make a nice big table of values. And I hope I don't run out of room here. We're going to start at -5. And this goes from -5 to -2. All right. And this is what's kind of weird. I'm going to actually repeat the -2 for this line. So I'm going to repeat it here. And I have to go all the way to 4. So I actually did have more than enough room here. All right, so basically from here to here, this is the 3x. Oops, this is the, let me get rid of that. From here to here is the 3x plus 11. And from here to here is going to be the -1/2 x plus 5. And we could do this by hand. We could plug in -5 in and use it here. But I think this is a good example of where the calculator can help us out. So let's do that. I'm going to bring up my calculator. I'm going to hit the y equals, and I'm going to put in the 3x plus 11. And I'm going to look at my table of values. And I'm just going to copy down all the values here. So for -5, it's -4. And it goes up 3 every single time. So I'm just really just copying down my table of values. -4 is -1. I go to 2. And I go to 5. So I can graph this part of it. -5, -4. And it's a closed circle there because it's got an equal sign here. Then -4 is -1. -3 is +2. and negative 2 is 5, and since it's going to be a closed circle because that's an equal. So I'm going to connect that. Try that again. Cool. So I've done the 3x plus 11 segment here, that piece. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing for the negative 1/2 x plus 5. I'm going to go to my y equals, get this out of here, and I'll do negative 0.5 x plus 5. Enter. I'm going to get my table of values, and I'm going to start at my negative 2 and go from there. Oops, one too many. So it goes 6, 5.5, 5, 4.5. So I'm going to start at 6, and I'm basically going down 0.5 each time. So I don't need to look at that every single time. So it's going to be 6, 5.5, 5, 4.5, 4, 3.5, and 3. So I'll plot these. Negative 2, 6 is going to be all the way up here just above this point, but since this was strictly less than, I'm going to make this an open circle. Then I'm going to go negative 1 is 5.5. Zero is 5. And I'm going down a half each time until I get to 4. And at 4 it's going to be a closed circle. And let me connect that. And there we go. And this is my piecewise function. So it wanted us to do it with a table. So the only kind of weird thing was that you had to kind of duplicate that point because these lines didn't connect. Now it says state the range of this function. And remember, the range is the max minus the min. Well, the maximum goes all the way up to 6, and the minimum is negative 4. So 6 minus a negative 4 is equal to 10. So the range is equal to 10. Cool. All right, so those were some, I think, good questions to go over. It's your job to do the rest of this worksheet and then go online and take the online quiz. Thanks for listening. Hope this was a good help.